The San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. It is 9:08 on September 15th, 2023, and I'm going to call to order today's regular meeting of the board. We are meeting in person this morning with commissioners, staff, and members of the public in attendance. We have a quorum with 1, 2, 3, 5 of us. 6? No, we're waiting for Melinda. Okay. Present, and video of today's meeting is also being streamed live online. The link to watch today's meeting is on the Housing Commission website at www.sdhc.org. Members of the public who wish to provide comments to the board will need to complete a speaker slip here in the boardroom and submit it to our Vice President of Communications, Scott Marshall, who is standing over on the side of the boardroom. In a moment, I will be proposing that agenda item 100 be placed on the consent agenda for today's meeting. Members of the public may provide comments about the item on the consent agenda before submitting a speaker request form for that item before the board considers the consent agenda. To speak in favor of any item on today's agenda, please submit a gold-colored form. To speak in opposition to any agenda item, please submit a pink-colored form. And those who wish to address the board about a topic that is not on the agenda should fill out a white request form. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments about agenda items or non-agenda public comments. However, if a large number of people wish to provide non-agenda public comments or speak on a single agenda item, comments will be limited to 1 minute each. Collective testimony by those who support or oppose an item shall be limited to no more than 15 minutes total per side. When I call your name, please step to the podium, state your name for the record, and begin making your comments. Now, it's time for the non-agenda public comments. I have one non-agenda public comment speaker slip, and that is from Joy Senyata. Joy, the mic is yours.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Joy Senyata, District 3. First, thank you to all involved. I know some of you are here. For all involved with the six informational reports on today's agenda. I really appreciate all that reporting. A big thank you to Mr. Ernest Barfield of Gans and Associates, of Gans and Associates for his report on the job description of the CEO position at the San Diego Housing Commission. This is an important item both for Mr. Davis and for others, and especially for the public. So I waited so long for that job description. I am really thrilled to have it. Here is my update on state bills, which I am following. First is AB 799, and I want to thank two of the government affairs people that are here this morning. They gave me a little update on this, and I really appreciated that. So this is the HAP housing bill, and on Tuesday of this week it was put on pause. So we'll have to get behind it again because it's a little bit bumpy. So please get behind it starting in 2024. SB 4. Okay, this is a big one. It's on the governor's desk, ready to be signed, and it's an affordable housing bill. And it's the one that's going to allow churches, mosques, synagogues, and so forth, and nonprofit colleges to build affordable housing on their properties and so forth. And they're going to be tweaking the regulations and all of that good stuff. So it's going to be signed. I know it is going to be signed. It's all ready, and it's there. So this is a big deal, and I know you're going to be all excited about that as I am already. And a big thank you on both those bills to Assemblymember Chris Ward, because he's done a real terrific job for affordable housing on the state level and other areas. And then lastly, SB 9, which was really signed, sealed, and delivered a while back. I just wanted to mention it because it's in the process of being implemented now, and it really needs our help on the local level because this is a lot of work to implement these things. And so what the information I got is that we need to really get behind it and get it implemented. So a big thank you to President Pro Tem Toni Atkins for her work. This is her bill, I believe. I don't know if there's others or not, but a big thank you to all of them, but especially to Toni Atkins. So that's it for today, I think. So, but I'll be here here again several times, and I thank you for listening so much, and it's just wonderful to have all of you here. This is important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy. It's always a pleasure to see you here at the meeting, and good morning. All right, I don't have any further non-agenda public comment slips, so we will move on to commissioner comments. And I'd like to say, first of all, good morning to everybody. But Commissioner Hubbard, it's good to see you this morning. You know, it's nice to have almost everybody here, and I think Melinda is expected here, so we will have no Melinda. Okay, so it's good to see almost everybody. All right, any further comments from the commissioners?
Lisa, may I ask you our 3 questions? Do I need to ask them, or do you have them all handy? Okay.
So for the month of August, referrals to our coordinated intake program into shelter, August 1st through August 31st, there were 2,018 referrals made. Of those, 459 were complete referrals and ended up accessing a shelter bed. So that's a 23% success rate into shelter. Currently, as of yesterday, our shelters were at 98% occupancy, which is essentially full, except for maybe a handful of beds a day that become available, 10 to 15 on average.
Will you repeat that, Lisa? We're at what percentage?
98% occupancy.
And I assume that the beds that do become available every day are gone by 11?
By about, anywhere between 9 and 11 in the morning, they're usually gone.
Thank you for our monthly reminder that we have a severe shortage of shelter.
Any further comments?
May I do a follow-up?
Yes.
About that. Just got me thinking about our homeless situation in the city. Is that a daily occurrence or calculated, or how is that calculated? Just to sort of...
The occupancy rate?
Yes.
We calculate it every day. By about 8 o'clock in the morning, we get a report from all of the city-funded and commission-funded shelter programs about their occupancy based on the bed count of the night before. So we count it. We do that daily, but it has been running anywhere from about 97 to 99% over the last month, which actually in the summer is a little surprising. Oftentimes around the summertime, it drops a little bit, but it's been very high.
Thank you for keeping an eye on this. This is really important for myself and the commissioners, I believe. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Any further comments? Lisa, I have a question for you. I know you just sat down.
Camp out.
Right. There are, I know that we are in the midst of HomeKey, the HomeKey application process. I want to say thank you to all the people who agreed to support the application. Can you give us an update on the timeline? What expectations?
Well, actually, I would defer to our interim CEO for that. Happy to answer any other questions.
And I have one more after that.
Well, actually, I would defer to our Executive Vice President of Real Estate.
If you come to the mic and say you're going to defer to somebody else.
I'm just kidding. Good morning. Thanks for the question. So we got 2 applications in May. That is for Abbott Street as well as the Ramada Inn, also known as Pacific Village. We have gone through threshold review successfully, and we anticipate hearing hopefully a positive award status in about 2 weeks. The other 2 we applied in July. We expect to hear threshold comments in about 30 to 45 days, and then an award will trail after.
Perfect. Thank you. It seemed to align with both Vice Chair Klempner's question, Commissioner Hester's question, as we look for capacity. HomeKey is a possible opportunity. So anyone that wants to support the HomeKey application, they can reach out to you and you can give them instructions.
Yes, please.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Lisa, I have another question. I continue to get questions about the potential for a large shelter property called Sunbreak Ranch. Is it possible? Can we get additional information as the board about the viability of this project?
I mean, certainly we've heard a little bit, but not had a direct presentation from any of the proponents of Sunbreak Ranch. We can certainly do some research or invite more information and bring that back to the board as an update.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Any further commissioner comments? All right. Next, then we will move to a report from our interim president and CEO, Jeff Davis. Jeff.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. We've had an active summer since our last board meeting, so we've got several items to share with you this morning. Today, we're announcing the launch of a dedicated phone line and email address to connect potential first-time homebuyers with the Housing Commission's homeownership advisor. First-time homebuyers can call 619-578-7788 or email homeownership@sdhc.org. The Home Ownership Advisor is a new position to help households, learn more about the types of assistance available. He will refer interested households as needed to programs to prepare for home ownership, such as credit counseling or debt reduction. The Homeownership Advisor can assist households interested in our pilot program for middle-income first-time homebuyers of color. He will also advise those interested in our first-time homebuyer programs for low-income families. We are distributing a news release today about how to connect to our Homeownership Advisor. And after today's board meeting, we'll also be sharing suggested social media posts in English and Spanish with you, council offices, and community organizations to ask them to help us raise awareness. I also have a few updates this morning regarding our ongoing efforts to produce additional affordable housing throughout the city. First, on August 29th, we announced our current Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA. A total of up to $29 million is available. Our affordable housing NOFA includes up to $19 million to create housing units that will remain affordable for households with income up to 60% of the area median income, which is currently about $82,600 per year for a family of 4. Our permanent supportive housing NOFA makes available up to $10 million and up to 100 Veteran Affairs supportive housing vouchers. These resources are to create permanent affordable rental housing with supportive services for people experiencing homelessness. Applications for the NOFA are due by October 31st. After reviews and preliminary award determinations are made, recommendations for loans to developments will be presented to this board for consideration. We anticipate the funding through our NOFA would support the creation of approximately 190 affordable housing units and 100 permanent supportive housing units. These units would add to the more than 23,000 affordable housing units in service within the city in which the Housing Commission has participated through a variety of our functions. Additional affordable housing units would also be developed through the state's award of $45 million in a grant to the Housing Commission. Governor Newsom announced the Catalytic Infill Infrastructure Grant Program's statewide awards last month. Mayor Gloria and the Housing Commission announced the funding award to San Diego on August 30th. I want to thank this board for the leadership and support we received for this effort. This board authorized the Housing Commission to apply for the grant at the April 6th meeting. The grant would support the development of more than 1,180 affordable homes at developments in downtown San Diego in Council District 3 and South San Diego in Council District 8. These include units for families with very low income as well as moderate income households. Vice Chair Klumpner represented the Housing Commission at the grand opening of the development known as The Helm on August 17th. Mayor Todd Gloria, Councilmember Stephen Whitburn, California Chief Deputy Treasurer Patrick Henning, and affirmed Housing President Jimmy Silverwood spoke at this event. This development transformed a parking lot in the Cortez Hill area into 77 affordable studios and 1 manager's apartment. Vice Chair Klumpner noted in his remark that this development is a great example of how new homes and new residents can invigorate a community. 32 units, or more than 40% of the total, are available for San Diegans with extremely low income, up to 30% of the AMI. And that is just about $29,000 per year for 1 person. The Housing Commission awarded 32 rental housing vouchers to help pay the rent for those 32 units. With the board's approval, the Housing Commission also awarded $4.2 million to support this development. The day after the Helms grand opening celebration, the Cortez Hill neighborhood was also the site of a groundbreaking for a new affordable housing development. Our chair, Mitch Mitchell, spoke at this event for Cortez Hill Apartments. Mayor Gloria, Councilmember Whitburn, and Chief Deputy Treasurer Henning also participated in the Cortez Hill groundbreaking, along with Community Housing Works CEO Sean Spear. When it is completed, Cortez Hill Apartments will provide 87 affordable rental housing units for people with income of 30% to 40% of the AMI. 14 units will be for people experiencing chronic homelessness. And 73 units will provide homes for people with extremely low income but not experiencing homelessness. The Housing Commission awarded 87 rental housing vouchers to help pay rent for the residents of this property. And this board also approved a loan of up to $5 million towards this development. Last month, we also commemorated the opening of a new shelter program that provides private rooms and other amenities for families experiencing homelessness. A former motel in Barrio Logan is the site of the new shelter program. Mayor Gloria and Vice Chair Klumpner announced at the news conference this new shelter. The Housing Commission contracts with Alpha Project to operate the shelter, and this board approved that contract at the July 21st meeting. The city's Homelessness Strategies and Solutions Department administers the site lease. The first families to reside at the shelter moved there last month from the Bridge Shelter at Golden Hall. Shelter residents will receive supportive services such as case management and help to locate permanent or longer-term housing, childcare, and employment. The program also provides basic services such as 3 meals a day, private restrooms, laundry facilities, telephone access, messaging services, and mail. And finally, I want to acknowledge and congratulate our procurement department for receiving the Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award. This is the 7th consecutive year that the Housing Commission has received this honor from the National Procurement Institute. The award recognizes organizations that receive a high score based on standardized criteria that measures innovation, professionalism, productivity, e-procurement, and leadership attributes of the organization. Our procurement department does great work, and it's nice to see them receive this national recognition. And this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that report. Any questions? All right, next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting and special meeting of July 21st, 2023, and the special meeting of July 25th, 2023. No speaker slips have been submitted for that portion. So, and do any commissioners have any changes to the minutes, comments, questions, or do I have a motion? Motion by... motion and a second. All right.
Member Hester Hubbard.
I know, right? I was like looking over Hester Hubbard. I went Jackson, Hubbard, Hester. I'll get it. Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Hester, a second by Commissioner Jackson. And all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. All right, next up is the consent agenda. As I said at the start of the meeting today, I'm proposing that item 100, the amendment to the trash and recycling services contract, be added to the consent agenda for today. I do not see any speaker slips for item 100. So seeing that no speaker slips have been submitted, this concludes the public comment period for this item. Commissioners, any comments, questions, or do I have a motion on the consent agenda? Motion by Commissioner Jackson. Second by Commissioner Hester. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we'll go to the regular agenda. Next up is item 101, and it is the proposed revisions to the City of San Diego's first-time homebuyer program. And we will take public comments after the staff presentation. Our Vice President of Single Family Housing and Finance, Suja Raman, will present this item. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning. Can we go back to Zoom?
Yes.
Sorry. Oops. Good morning, Commissioners and Chair. The item before you today is a request to approve 3 proposed revisions to the City of San Diego First-Time Homebuyer Program. The Housing Commission has operated a first-time homebuyer program in the City of San Diego since 1992 to help low and moderate income households achieve homeownership. Since the program's inception, the Housing Commission has provided more than $195 million of assistance in the form of loans, grants, and mortgage credit certificates, and assisted more than 6,000 homebuyers. The current program provides a deferred down payment loan of up to 22% of the purchase price with the borrower contributing 3% of their own funds towards the down payment. The loan carries a 3% simple interest and is deferred for 30 years with no monthly payments required. The Housing Authority of the City of San Diego has delegated to the Housing Commission Board the authority to make revisions to the first-time homebuyer program. Current real estate market conditions, as you may know, and especially in San Diego, are much different than a couple of years ago. According to the California Association of Realtors and Zillow, as of June 2023, the median price of a single-family home in San Diego was $958,250, an increase of 38% compared to the same time in 2020, and an increase of 123% over the last 20 years. Several news outlets and realtor organizations announced just this week that the median sales price of a single-family home in San Diego now exceeds $1 million. Additionally, in the past year, 30-year mortgage interest rates have more than doubled, rising from 3% to 7%, reaching a 20-year high according to a Redfin report. The extraordinarily high price of homes, rising interest rates, limited inventory, and other market factors in the San Diego region have led to a huge affordability crisis and made it extremely competitive and very difficult for first-time homebuyers to purchase a home in San Diego. This slide shows a real-life example of a low-income homebuyer who purchased a home in July of 2020 using down payment and closing cost assistance from our first-time homebuyer program, and how the market has drastically changed today. This particular homebuyer purchased a 3-bedroom home in Paradise Hills in 2020 for $460,000. He contributed $13,800 as down payment and took out a first mortgage loan at an interest rate of 3.875% with a monthly mortgage payment of $2,259. Now, 3 years later, the same house is valued at $689,000, an increase of 49%. At the current interest rates of around 7%, the monthly mortgage payment would be $4,113, almost $2,000 more than that in 2020. And this same homeowner, assuming his income has not increased sufficiently, would not be able to afford to buy this house today. In 2021, the Housing Commission engaged Urban Institute, a leading national research firm, to conduct a study to explore the feasibility of increasing opportunities for middle-income and Black homebuyers under the First-Time Homebuyer Program. One of the recommendations in Urban Institute's 2022 report was to re-examine eligibility criteria and program design. Urban Institute studies cited insufficient funds for down payment as the biggest barrier to accessing homeownership. Their study of mortgage denial rates showed that 35.3% of applications are denied for debt-to-income ratios. Additionally, the Housing Commission surveyed the loan officers currently participating in the First-Time Homebuyer Program to identify challenges low-income buyers experience in the current housing market and what Housing Commission guidelines create the biggest barriers for households who may otherwise qualify for assistance. 54% of the respondents cited debt-to-income ratio and/or down payment as the biggest barriers low-income buyers experience. The Housing Commission also researched first-time homebuyer programs in similarly sized California cities such as Los Angeles and San Francisco. City of LA staff stated that their first-time homebuyer program has always required just a 1% down payment contribution from the buyers. San Francisco, on the other hand, like us, changed their down payment requirement to 1% of the purchase price in 2022 in response to the challenging real estate market conditions. Over the years, Housing Commission staff has continuously monitored the real estate market and responded by making revisions to the first-time homebuyer loan program. Some of the program enhancements we have made include issuing pre-approvals and guaranteeing a 30-day closing since 2021. To continue to assist households in purchasing their first home, Housing Commission staff sought board approval in 2022 to modify the deferred payment loan program to increase the assistance provided from 17% to 22% of the sales price based on the applicant's need. The Housing Commission also put together a robust outreach effort to promote the program to continue to assist potential home buyers. Some of the outreach activities include first-time homebuyer community workshops, social media posts, expanding the list of participating lenders, and providing communication resources to the mayor's office, council members' offices, commissioners, and community organizations. These resources included 30-second videos and flyers in English and Spanish. Today, Housing Commission staff is proposing 3 revisions to the current first-time homebuyer program to continue to help low and moderate income households in San Diego achieve homeownership. Change the minimum required buyer down payment to a minimum of 1% of the purchase price. Increase the maximum debt-to-income ratio up to 50%, and increase the deferred payment loan program to provide up to 25% of the purchase price. For additional reference, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the largest government-sponsored enterprises that buy mortgage loans, have also allowed debt-to-income ratios of up to 50% on first mortgage loans for a few years now. This slide shows an example of how the proposed revisions affect the affordability and purchase price for a household of 2 with an annual income of $88,200, which is 80% of San Diego's area median income. The column on the left shows that this family could buy a house for $554,000 with the current 22% loan we offer, with the borrower contributing 3% of the sales price as down payment and a maximum debt-to-income ratio of 45%. The table on the right shows that with our proposed increase to provide a loan for 25% of the purchase price, we would be providing a deferred loan of $156,250. The buyer would need to contribute $6,250 for the down payment, and the same family can now afford a house with a purchase price of $625,000. With the proposed revisions, the buyer's purchasing power increased by $71,000 in this example. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Sujata, I just want to tell you that you're so calm when you're making this presentation, and for all of us up here who read this presentation before the meeting, it's an interesting sight. So, comments, questions? We don't have any speaker slips, so we will go immediately to commissioner comments and questions. Vice Chair Klempner.
Thank you. I wanted to note really briefly how important I think that outreach is, and I appreciate how robust the list of outreach activities. One of the things that I kind of struggle with these programs is, who's aware and accesses the program, because the goal is that it catalyzes new home ownership for people who would not otherwise be on that path. And there's a fine line between doing that and essentially supporting people who were already on the path and were sophisticated enough to figure out that they might qualify for assistance. Not to say that anybody who qualifies, isn't deserving of it, but we do want to make sure that people who may not be thinking about home ownership realize that they can. I think what the chair was alluding to, we were just talking about, is this is not with respect to the program, and I think that the changes we're making make perfect sense, but the monthly payments in the current market are just really tough to see, and I think highlights why we have this program. But for any of us who have been fortunate enough to have a mortgage for a few years, it's kind of shocking that this is where these monthly payments are landing, even with the assistance of this program. And lastly, I will say that I have a little bit of a mixed feeling about the first-time homebuyer programs, not because it's not important, but just because it feels like such a steep hill we're climbing with the conditions. Specifically, just we don't really have new for sale inventory coming online in the city in any meaningful quantities, and so this is all residents who need housing, who deserve a shot at owning their housing, competing over essentially a fixed pool of housing. So correct me if I'm wrong about any of that, but that's my observations, both on on the more depressing side about what the situation looks like out there. But I mean, these are certainly changes that it seems like we need to make if we want this program to be worthwhile. I just think that we should all be very realistic that we're not going to be able to solve the home ownership issue solely with programs like these, as long as there's nothing new for sale coming into the world. So thank you.
You're welcome. Do you want me to address a few of your comments?
Yes, please.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay, sorry. So, on the outreach front, you're absolutely right. We conduct a variety of outreach efforts throughout the year. We do a lot of workshops now. In the past, we didn't have to because we had organically customers coming to us. But to raise awareness, we do. In fact, Commissioner Hester, we came and did a workshop with your United Domestic Workers Union about a year and a half ago. So we're consistently doing them. We have a FDIC workshop coming up in October, which is entirely in Spanish. So we are making sure we're reaching the right clientele and raising awareness about our programs. As for the monthly payment and all of that, we will continue to make very not stringent, but responsible underwriting decisions, because we, of course, don't want to put people into homes that they can't afford. So it's all about sustainable home ownership and making sure that the customer has a good credit history, has been able to save, and will continue being able to afford to live in the home that they're purchasing. And as for the inventory of homes, you're absolutely right. The inventory has shrunk even for middle, moderate income, or any income levels. It's become very unaffordable for anyone to buy a home. There's not many homes in the market. What we're finding is, unfortunately, I should say, is condominiums. Most families who would have been able to buy a single-family home 3 years ago are still buying, but they're now buying condos and townhomes.
Just to follow up on that, that is interesting to hear that, multifamily ownership seems like, in a city like San Diego, where we have a space constraint, that just is going to have to be the future, whether that be a good or a bad thing. I appreciate hearing that we're carefully vetting the underwriting to make sure that people aren't getting in over their heads. Although, as you were saying that, I thought, this topic is the only one that we talk about that's on the ownership side, and everything else is on the rental side. And we're all very well aware that people are in rental leases that they can't afford because they're out of options. And so, while this is, kind of stretching into, how much can people really afford, it is nice to see that we are as accommodating of that when they get a chance to own as we are, when people are forced to go rent at astronomically high prices as well. So thank you.
And an added comment is, every person that's buying a home is giving up a Section 8 voucher or an affordable rental. So we are freeing up some of that housing.
I had not realized that, and that is fantastic. Thank you.
Oh.
Esther.
Thank you for this presentation. I see this, when you're presenting this, I felt so much hope, right? That there's hope that we're offering, that this agency is offering to our citizens, or communities, right? So, apart from and thank you for doing the presentation at the United Domestic Workers membership meeting. We also now represent family childcare providers, which I automatically am zooming in on this opportunity to match them up with this program. Family child care providers, as you know, are small and large family child care daycare centers running from their homes. And so if we can figure out a way to streamline some of those conversations, I mean, I'm sure our family child care providers would be interested in some of these opportunities. So thank you for bringing this hope this morning.
You're very welcome, and I can connect with you offline. Perfect.
Commissioner Jackson.
There we go. So my question was, you mentioned that the people will be losing a housing voucher or affordable housing apartment that they have now. Is that required to enter the program? It's not, is it? You don't have to be a participant.
Yeah, so right now we don't have a program where you can use your Section 8 voucher towards mortgage payments. So most of the families that are buying a home, not most, they don't get to keep their Section 8 voucher.
I'm saying, do you have to have a Section 8 voucher in order?
No.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
no.
I didn't think so, because of the way it sounded, you said they're losing the voucher. So, okay.
No, thank you.
Great.
Sorry, I misunderstood. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Hi, so you were mentioning that you do lose the Section 8 voucher. Is that, at what point? Is it when you say I want to be a part of this home buyers program? Is it, okay, well, your Section 8 is going to go away now? Or is it once you, like, how far into the process is it? Is it once you're approved, then you lose your Section 8 voucher? Like, at what point?
Only after you purchase a home and move into it and give up your rental. Is Azucena here? I think I should call her over, or maybe Jeff knows.
Yeah, I just want to point out what Sujata is saying, that is typically the person that comes to us as a first-time home buyer has some sort of low-income housing. So sometimes it's a voucher, sometimes it's just a naturally occurring affordable unit. So it's not that the voucher is necessary for you to qualify. Yeah.
HUD did issue some mandatory guidance that's going to go into effect. So any voucher holder that has ownership in a home would then be disqualified from the program. So that would be a HUD rule coming down.
And that's as soon as you say, oh, I want to be part of the...
Yeah, so as Sujata mentioned, is that once you've purchased a home, you've moved in, you would relinquish your tenancy at the rental, and at that point, that's when the voucher would phase out.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that the HUD rule is a result of, once you get into a home, you might think, I'm going to leave my voucher for a family member, a sibling, a child, and they want to make sure that the voucher goes back into the pot in the process. So I can see why someone would want to do that. All right. Sujata, again, once again, great presentation, sobering, but great presentation. I have a couple of questions. With the rise in interest rates, you base this at 6.5%, which I think we're seeing 7% now. I'm assuming that you're seeing a slowdown in applications overall.
Yes, the last couple of years has been a little challenging, one because of course, the high price of homes, the fewer homes being available, and then last year especially rates went up from 3.5% to 7%. We have 6.5% as an example because people are buying down the rate. So we provide a $10,000 closing cost grant. Some of that helps towards bringing the rate down. Yes, we are seeing a lower volume of applications than years past.
Okay. I think for the next meeting, if we can get, I think it's always important to set the table where we see where we were and where we are. So I think what you did was excellent. You said, okay, in 2020, but if we can look at it at a side by side that was 5 years ago and today, I think we continue to have this conversation about the high cost of living in San Diego. And I want people to look at us as a resource of reality, which is, it's not just a conversation. It is an extreme burden when you're trying to purchase a home in San Diego, and as Vice Chair Klumner said, and we still struggle to increase production. All right, I think the BIA is talking about if we can build 3,500 units this year, then great, right? That's not going to get us there, right? And we're going to continue to see this problem. You mentioned on the outreach. My next set of questions are on the outreach. I know we do it in English and Spanish. Have we considered, any other languages? I think I always look at it as what are we limiting this conversation to? And should we expand it to other languages? Or, is that a consideration?
Deborah wants to talk, but I
Here goes that defer. Here goes that defer to the game.
I know, but I can add that as part of the language access plan, and I think you're going there too.
Okay.
We do have loan documents and things like that, and important documents in Vietnamese also.
Okay, good. That's what-
although
that's
we don't see too many of the Asian population participating in our
Okay.
programs. But
Okay.
Deborah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And we've also connected with a community-based organization that translates into Somali and some other African languages, as well as Chinese, Tagalog. As part of our equity and inclusion efforts, we have determined that we want to expand to the top 7 languages.
Deborah, you're reading my mind. Mr. Davis can tell you I wrote the word translation down. So we do have a translation service, and we're doing. I think it's important that we note that in all documents and presentations is that we're not just limiting this to English and Spanish. There are home buyers in various communities in San Diego. We are seeing a growth in the number of communities in San Diego. So we are truly a population that is mixed with various cultures and ethnicities. And I would want everybody to feel like, okay, if I need to understand the process, there is a way for me to receive that translation in those documents. So
And I want to add, my own underwriting staff is almost like a United Nations. I have a Cambodian, a Laotian, an Indian, Eritrean, all of them speak native languages. So anytime a customer needs something else, my own team has been able to handle.
Well, and that's so important. I mean, I think when you're making a decision of this nature, looking into it, feeling like you can understand everything that you're being told is so important. So thank you. And then finally, on the outreach structure, I'm going to go back to tie into what Vice Chair Klempner said. I think the outreach structure sounds good, but I guess my question is if you're not there, like if you were at the UDW presentation, you heard the information, but I'm assuming that Commissioner Hester would say, well, not everybody was there. People were working and all. What can we do to create a more robust structure that's accessible online, easy to understand, easy to connect with? And I say online with an asterisk. What we learned during COVID is the digital divide is still alive and well. A lot of people can't get online. So what can we do to create a more robust outreach? So 24 hours a day, someone can go on and go, okay, this is what I'm looking at. Here's what it says. Here's what I need to do. And then also, Jeff, I think it's one of those things. We've reached a point where we have to think about non-traditional ways of outreach, that are in communities of concern where they want to buy a home. We had this conversation once about someone said, listen, you keep putting an ad in the paper. I don't get the paper. Okay, well, that's great. And I was talking with members of Pastors on Point, and they were saying, if you want to really connect, you put a poster up in the laundromat, put a poster up in the library. So I just would like to see what we can do to create a more robust structure of outreach. That's not just one day. We put it out there this time, and hopefully people saw it. But I do think it's important because homeownership is a hope and a dream for a lot of people, and being able to see this more robust outreach campaign, I think is going to be really important for us.
Absolutely. So I wanted to also add that our biggest promoters and marketers are the 350 loan officers who partner with us. So they're the ones that provide the first mortgage financing. They're in the community. They have their niche group of customers that they cater to. And that list has ever been expanding. So the first point of contact for any home buyer wishing to purchase is contacting a loan officer. And they're of different ethnicities, they speak different languages, and so on. Just this week, we conducted lender training, and 85 new loan officers signed up now. So we'll be close to having 500 loan officers who work for more than 50 banks, credit unions, mortgage brokers, you name it. They're all on our list. So they are the ones who actively promote, because obviously it's their bread and butter business as well. They want clients so that they provide first mortgage financing, and then they come to us for the down payment financing piece of it. Okay. But absolutely, take your points, and we'll make sure our outreach becomes even more robust.
Yeah, I just think there are people who are left out, not because we're intentionally doing it, but just because I think we have to be more creative in how we're consistently and in a broader fashion doing it. And so, Scott Marshall, I know as we're looking at social media, and we're becoming more aggressive on social media. These are messages that we should put out there. Okay. Any further comments, questions? Commissioner Hubbard.
Yeah, you mentioned in the presentation Black community, but it was kind of just added in there. So is there something specific for
Which
Black
slide? I'm
homeowners?
not sure.
I think.
Is it the Black Homebuyer Program
Yeah,
that
I think that
you're
was it.
referring to?
Yeah,
Okay.
I heard you mention the Black
The Wells Fargo grant.
along with everyone else, and it was like a
Yes.
extra. So I was wondering, is there?
This is a $7.5 million grant we
Yes.
received earlier this year.
So in June, Commissioner Hubbard, thank you for that question, but in June, we launched a race-conscious program geared specifically towards people of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And it caters to the 80% to 150% AMI population. So we're offering a $40,000 loan and grant combination to those who are wanting to purchase a home. And that program has been hugely successful. We've had a lot of interest, a lot of applications. We've funded 6 loans in 2.5 months. We have 4 more loans in process, and that's the Black Homebuyer Program that was made possible from a grant that we received from Wells Fargo. Yes, correct.
All right, any further questions, comments? All right, then, commissioners, I will entertain a motion and a second, if possible, on item 101.
So moved.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Clemner, second by Commissioner Hester. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Sujata.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is item 102, and this is the authorization to accept, this is one of my favorite items today. The authorization to accept the distribution, aka money, of the state budget allocation of grant funds. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Our Senior Vice President of Compliance and Equity Assurances, Deborah Fisher-Falk, will present the item. Deborah, it's good to see you this morning.
Good to see you as well. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Mitchell and board members. Good to see all of you. And I'm just going to jump right in. As part of the California Budget Act of 2023, the Housing Commission received grant funds via 2 state budget allocations. The first was $2 million for the University Avenue Densification Pilot Project, which State Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins advocated for. And the second was $750,000 to expand the existing multidisciplinary outreach program. State Assembly member Brian Mainshine championed these funds. The University Avenue Densification Pilot Project involves a proposal to increase the density at Casa Colina, a Housing Commission-owned affordable rental housing property in City Heights for seniors with low income. The development currently consists of 75 units. This pilot project is part of the Housing Commission's broader preliminary effort to explore increasing density throughout its real estate portfolio. The pilot also utilizes Mayor Gloria's Housing Action Package 2.0 proposal, written in partnership with the Housing Commission, which allows for increased density on public agency-owned parcels. The Housing Commission is also continuing to work with the County of San Diego on a potential agreement that would eventually allow for an adjacent county-owned parcel to be developed in partnership with the Housing Commission. At the October 3rd, 2022 joint meeting of the County of San Diego Board of Supervisors and the San Diego City Council, each jurisdiction adopted a joint resolution supporting an effort to increase density at Housing Commission properties as a way to increase the availability of affordable homes. State funding will expand a currently deployed multidisciplinary outreach team to address homelessness. The team includes a nurse practitioner, clinical outreach specialists, a medical assistant outreach worker, peer support specialists, and a part-time substance abuse counselor. The street-based case management and supportive service model works directly with individuals living on the street and aims to divert individuals from the crisis response system and foster connections to permanent and other long-term housing. People Assisting the Homeless, or PATH, operates the program and works with Father Joe's Villages to provide healthcare services. The Housing Commission anticipates receiving the 2 budget allocations in early calendar year 2024. The funds weren't included in the Housing Commission's proposed fiscal year 2024 budget, which the Housing Authority approved on June 12, 2023. If the Housing Commission is authorized to accept and expend the funds, it'll increase the fiscal year 2024 funding sources and uses by $2.750 million to support the proposed projects. Oops. Today we are recommending that the board take the actions stated in the staff report and shown on these slides. That concludes our presentation, and staff are available for questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Commissioners, we have one speaker slip, public comment on item 102. It is Joy Senyata. Joy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Couldn't do it without you, Mr. Marshall. Okay. Oh, wrong page. All right. You've all heard this line, and I love it in this item. You had me at hello on this item. Of course, grant funds are music to my ears. And something else, I don't know why, but when I read this item, every word just sort of jumped off the paper, and I kept saying, yes, yes, yes. It's just so beautifully written because it is beautiful. And so I'm really excited about this item. So here are my likes. Thank you, Governor Newsom, for Assembly Bill 102. It's grant money, and we love that. It increases density, housing for seniors, underserved City Heights community, collaboration with others and jurisdictions. Also, I liked partnering with Mayor Gloria and the County of San Diego. And as our presenter mentioned, a big thank you to President Pro Tem Tony Atkins again. And $2 million has a nice sound to it, doesn't it? And then moving forward to the homeless part, addressing gaps in the homeless response system. You know, for me, that's so critical, and I just really love to see that there. And street-based case management. Hey, I've been in the trenches for years, not the real trenches of the homeless people, but as best I can face. And boy, a lot can happen on the street level. I'm so glad to see that mentioned there. And so thank you also then to Assemblymember Brian Meansheim for the $750,000 for this very, very critical need. So it's a great one, and I thank you and love to all.
Thank you, Joy, once again for your supportive comments. All right, no further speaker slips. Commissioners, any comments, questions? We have a motion. Second by Commissioner Hubbard. All right. Any further comments, questions? Again, great job by the staff on making the request, and Thank you very much, Pro Tem Atkins, and Assemblymember Manjan. All right. Commissioner Jackson, I'm going to allow this.
There we go. Okay. So I noticed here the units here are 75 units for seniors, correct? That's strictly senior housing?
Yes.
Okay. So are we looking at percentage that we can start looking at on some of those projects that be dedicated to seniors, since they are the fastest growing homeless population right now?
I am going to ask Executive Vice President
And is that something
Emily
that we
Jacobs.
Emily, come on down.
something that we can start looking at a formula on, at least 25% of all new housing that comes online, dedicating towards seniors. We're dedicating a certain percentage toward veterans, which is great. We're looking at the seniors also, most of them through no fault of their own, are becoming homeless.
Yes.
And so that's one of the biggest concerns we need to actually address.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question, and I'm not going to do this alone. Lisa, get your butt up here. So with respect to densification, a little bit about the project itself. The Housing Commission is in the heavyweight ring with featherweight resources, just to sort of give you a metaphor there. And on this densification effort, how I'm sort of referring to it is it's our field of dreams. If we build it, further investment will come, which will also serve seniors, to your point. It is a priority population for us. I will let Lisa speak a little bit more to that. This particular site in City Heights will have preservation, Joy, had to throw that out there for you, as well as new construction, and will really be able to go to scale in partnership with Mayor Gloria's Housing Action Package 2.0 to allow us to further prioritize the senior population.
You are right on point with that. About 35% on any given month of persons experiencing homelessness in our region are over 55 years of age or older. So we know that's a big gap in the system. It's a gap from a housing perspective. It's also a gap from a shelter perspective. We're working with the Corporation for Supportive Housing right now to update our targets and our goals for the city's community action plan to address homelessness. It was a 10-year plan that went to council in late 2019. We're at about 4 years in right now, so they are working on 6-year goals, and those goals will identify the types of resources we need. The second phase of that work will look at subpopulations and where there's gaps, particularly in relation to women, families with children, seniors, and persons with higher level disability and physical needs. So you're right on the money with that. That's exactly what we need to be looking at.
Thank you.
All right. Good question, Commissioner Jackson. Thank you very much for the answers. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed, seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Deborah, thank you very much. And again, kudos to the staff and the team. This is the right direction for the commission. Is anytime we can expand on our own properties and create housing opportunities, and I agree with Commissioner Jackson, and I think everybody up here agrees, we need to be more aggressive about segmenting. We're the fastest growing population is seniors. Let's get them some help. So thank you very much. All right, next up on the agenda is item 103, is the approval of the Housing Commission State and Federal Advocacy and Legislative Engagement Guide. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Lisa Jones is back up for this presentation. Lisa, the floor is yours. Please begin when you are ready.
Thank you. I defer to Molly Weber. Kidding, she's not here.
Yeah, exactly. We'll wait for her, okay?
If we can wait till last week of
if she
October.
hurries down, a couple months.
All right, thank you. Bear with me. I will do my best, but I'm no Molly. All right, good morning, Chair Mitchell and board members. Let me skip to the next one here and get myself sorted out. All right. This is the second year that the Housing Commission has created an advocacy and legislative engagement guide for the board's consideration as part of our strategic plan. In today's presentation, we'll discuss the strategic plan and how advocacy-related decisions are made. This includes the internal policy development process and avenues for stakeholder engagement. We'll then summarize this year's advocacy efforts for both the state and federal government, provide an overview of the legislative activities for 2024, and identify upcoming legislative and budget opportunities. We'll conclude with a discussion of steps for next year's legislative session. The Legislative Engagement Guide supports key strategic priority areas in the fiscal year 2022 to 2024 strategic plan by helping garner support and secure funding for the Housing Commission's core work. This includes increasing quality, affordable housing and housing preservation solutions, helping families increase the opportunity for self-sufficiency and quality of life, and advancing homelessness solutions. Strategic Priority Area 5 in the strategic plan is advocacy, communication, public engagement. It includes establishing priority policy areas and a policy engagement guide to foster progress toward the Housing Commission's vision and secure additional public funding. The Housing Commission's Policy Department monitors legislative and regulatory activities to identify issues and legislation that could affect the people served by Housing Commission programs. They work across the agency to provide policy recommendations to address a variety of issues. The Housing Commission regularly engages with elected leaders and stakeholders in state and federal advocacy regarding legislation. The proposed Advocacy and Legislative Engagement Guide will provide a framework for policy engagement in calendar year 2024. To create the engagement guide, the policy team has outlined the development process to engage with Housing Authority members, Housing Commission departments, and stakeholders in determining agency priorities. This process establishes guiding principles for legislative priorities and advocacy, which are then presented to the Housing Commission Board, as we are today, subject to review by the Housing Authority. During the year, the Housing Commission policy team tracks and analyzes affordable housing and homelessness policy and legislation at the state and federal level. They coordinate internally with Housing Commission departments regarding proposed legislation. This is a guide for SDHC's legislative priorities and advocacy. It allows for flexibility if unanticipated issues arise during the year. If a proposal is introduced that is not outlined in the current engagement guide, but falls within the Housing Commission's strategic plan areas, the policy team reviews the issue with senior leadership and board leadership for guidance. We also engage with policymakers and many stakeholders, including the city's government affairs team, on pending regulations, legislation, and funding appropriations. Throughout the process, the Housing Commission policy team ensures leadership is well briefed on advocacy efforts. Here with me today are Holly Fromeni de Jesus and Michael Gunning from Lighthouse Public Affairs, our Sacramento legislative consulting team. Holly is a partner with the firm and has more than 20 years' experience advocating on behalf of her clients. Michael is Lighthouse's Chief Strategy Officer and was appointed by 2 of California's governors to serve on California's Housing Finance Agency. I'm going to pass it over to them.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, Chair Mitchell, Commissioners. Michael Gunning here, Lighthouse Public Affairs. Really excited to be here. This is where the rubber meets the road, so it's really neat to be here with you, and we certainly appreciate, one, being engaging with you guys and being on the team and being part of the team. The calendar you see before you is the legislative calendar for next year, and we share this because being an old football player, I always think the session is like a football game, and there's 4 quarters. And considering that Holly and I just finished the 4th quarter about 12 hours ago at midnight, and came, right? They were literally going, right? But we wanted you to see this because what this says, this doesn't change. This is the calendar, and we always know that in California, our sessions are 2 years. So we just finished the first part, and we're going into the second part, and we know that the governor has 30 days until October 14th to act upon all the bills that are on his desk as of last night. But also it helps you see when budgets are submitted by the governor and when bill ideas have to be submitted by middle of February. So if there is legislation you want to look at, or even budget requests, these are things we begin to think about. And as you think about the next year and priorities for the commission, this gives you a sense of when you want to act upon them. I think it's the middle one, right? Yeah, there we go. Certainly an interesting year, always an interesting year in Sacramento, particularly with the leadership changes. Some of the leadership changes we know about, like with Speaker Rivas and Speaker Rendon, the change there. Other ones, I don't know if you're aware, but Mike McGuire from Healdsburg is going to be the next pro tem. Not sure when that happens, but 3 weeks ago there was a shift, and now he's anointed. They still have to figure out when that happens. So unfortunate as it is, because Senator Atkins was an awesome pro tem and a good friend of the commission and a good friend of ours as well. But that's part and parcel of how it goes. Of course, next year will be the election year, and with a presidential election too, it's always exciting. The good thing is that no tough legislation gets done in election year because everybody's worried about those votes. So we always like election years because it tends to be softer and they tend to get out of Sacramento quicker to go work on elections. As part of the leadership change, what this does mean, though, is new committee chairs. So we've had Buffy Wicks in the housing chair. We've had Scott Wiener as the Senate housing chair. We fully expect Scott to stay there, but we surely will see a new chair for housing on the assembly side. And McGuire was chair of governance and finance. Caballero has that now, but we're going to see some new changes under his leadership. And I think that'll be important as we think about our priorities for next year. As we begin to think about the themes for next year, I mean, you guys know it. You're in the middle. Housing and homeless still polls 1 and 2. Homeless actually 1. Housing 2 in California. It's still an issue. We do one of the more fascinating thing. Matt Haney from San Francisco created the Renters Caucus. So there's now a Renters Caucus. We like home ownership and home production, but that's part of it. So tenant protections will be part of the agenda. Preservation's big out there, always trying to preserve housing stock, easier to preserve than create new. And of course, for Holly and I, housing production is always number one. As Chair Mitchell remembers, I used to be with the Building Industry Association, so building new housing is very important to us. The last bullet point there, bonds and voter threshold proposals. I think you guys are aware ACA won by Assembly Member Aguilar Curry, and she wants to lower the voter threshold to 55% to pass bonds. And that's on the governor's desk. It went out 9 o'clock. Went out yesterday. And then also ACA 13, which is a measure by Assemblymember Ward from here to push back on business interests trying to raise the threshold to pass bonds. So we think those two bond measures on the ballot next year will be important, as well as a host of others that are going to come up for next year. With that, why don't we move the next slide, Holly?
Mr. Chair and Commission, it's nice to meet you. Holly Firmini de Jesus with Lighthouse Public Affairs. And I'm actually just excited. This is not just a summary of the legislation that the Commission supported, but this is a summary of some of our key successes this year. And in legislation, how do you define success? And it's a tough question with an easy answer. Many different ways. There's no one size fits all. Sometimes it makes it easy, as Joy talked about a few bills that are already on their way to the governor. That's an easy way to define success, especially with 3 of the measures on this list with AB 84, AB 911, and SB 406. There was no opposition. So that's a success. No opposition from the beginning, so they were very easy to pass with no real fights in committee or on the floor of session this year, and they're already on their way to the governor for signature. But 2 other bills we really want to highlight that we're very proud of what we were able to accomplish for the Commission on AB 1287. When we first got engaged earlier this year, the bill was almost on its way to the second house, and the Commission was just coming on as a supporter. And we were able to elevate the Commission's position from support into a key leadership role as not just a co-sponsor, but really becoming the lead sponsor. Even when you reflect on the last analysis on the floor, the Commission is listed as the source of this bill now as it's going to the governor. How did we make that happen? Because the Commission is a local jurisdiction. The other co-sponsors were advocacy organizations, which were very valuable to the effort, but bringing a local jurisdiction to the table that's so credible and is really a model agency, and that policy is working in San Diego. So making that policy and really vouching for it as a success, and now it's going to become a statewide policy because of success here in San Diego. We're really proud of the fact that we were able to move the Commission into that sponsor role as it goes to the governor for signature. And then finally, Joy also mentioned sometimes it's success when bills go on pause. And SB 653 is one of those bills that currently is what we refer to as a 2-year bill. And it's because we're in a 2-year session. The bill is physically in the Senate Appropriations Committee. It was on the suspense file, but we were able to engage very quickly with the author's office and other public housing authorities and really expressing serious concerns with the unfunded mandate was within the bill. And bills go on the suspense file. If you're not familiar with that, they go on the suspense file because they wait to see if the governor and the final budget's going to have money sometimes for those bills. And the final budget did not have any funding to fund that bill. And so that is why we were able to convince the author and her staff and the sponsors to let's put this bill on pause and that we're going to work with them. It's got a sound policy, it's got a great objective, but until there is a mandate with some money, that we would work together to ensure that we can help them actually get funding. And so we're really looking forward to engaging with them over the interim and hopefully into next year, and hopefully helping them actually successfully secure some money in the budget to help pay for those mandates. So again, consider that a success. We were opposed unless amended, and the fact that the bill became a 2-year bill is a real success story for this commission.
One of the fun things was listening to the prior presentation about this, because this was something that Holly and I had a chance to work on, both of those 2 budget allocations. But as you know, and we look at the budget for the next year, just 2 years ago, $100 million surplus, right? To now $33 billion deficit, and it continues next year. There's not any more money. But we really feel like, particularly with these two funding requests being approved, we've laid some groundwork for next year. So as you guys begin to process and approve this engagement guide, we do want to think about what type of requests can help. Can we help seniors, as you suggested, Commissioner, going forward? Another deficit year, as I said, is coming up. It's going to be important to get to recognize those requests and get them in soon so we can let the legislature know. We did see Assemblymember Mainshine last night and thanked him, of course, because as he was leaving, we thanked him for the contribution because that was very helpful there. But important for us to think about what sort of budget allocations we want for next year and get those in soon as possible. All right, let's close it out.
So again, this is not only an election year, but with the leadership changes and the many anticipated yet unanticipated committee changes. We don't know who is going to be leading those committees and policy committee, which makes it challenging for us to try to predict who we would select to lead some of the measures that are in our guide. But your guide is really what we consider is like the Bible for our legislative strategies going forward. And we're really excited. It's robust. There's a lot of great policy goals within it. But some of the things that we're setting as our priorities, it's full of ideas, and every idea can't be introduced as a law next year. But we're going to really hand select different policy ideas that are in the guide. One of our major goals is not just to sponsor a bill and support others, but really to work with a lot of coalition partners. There's quite a few coalitions in Sacramento, and here local coalitions and state coalitions. But we really have been more engaged on behalf of the commission, I think, than ever in the history of the commission with other statewide organizations that are working on, again, all those 3 Ps we talked about: tenant protections and preservation of affordable units and keeping them affordable for generations to come, as well as increasing production for homelessness all the way up to 80% of the AMI. So we're very excited that next year a lot of these ideas are going to end up in bills. Some of them will be in other bills that we support. And then we're going to, of course, aggressively look for more money. We need more money to build more units. So we're hoping to hopefully get close to doubling some of those budget requests, but we're going to really engage with the delegation early. The fall is always the best time to engage them on budget requests, so we're going to be 6 months ahead from where we were when we started this year, so hopefully we'll secure more money. And then, of course, we're inviting all of you to come join us. We're going to have an Advocacy Day in Sacramento. We're hoping all of you will come because we'll be seeing the new leaders. We'll be seeing the housing chairs. We should have a new budget chair, a new appropriations chair. And of course, the governor's office has a team on the housing policy side, from homelessness all the way to homeownership. So we plan on setting those meetings, and we really hope to have you join us, and we can introduce you to those thought leaders, because you all are thought leaders here on the ground that really bring so much to the table. So we're looking forward to achieving all of those goals next year in 2024.
Awesome. Thank you.
We'll just move it. Musical chairs. Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Holly. All right. So we're going to move on to our federal activities. The federal fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30th. On March 9th, 2023, President Biden released his fiscal year 2024 budget proposal, which increased the annual per capita low-income housing tax credit allocation and provided a modest increase to U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development programs. Congress is in current negotiations regarding the fiscal year 2024 federal budget, but we are likely to see a continuing resolution through the end of this year. As with the Housing Commission state advocacy efforts during this year's federal legislative session, we'll be tracking and analyzing proposed legislation, submitting letters of support, meeting with the San Diego delegation and California senators, and advocating for priority funding during the budget process. This year, at the federal level, the Housing Commission has submitted several letters to federal agencies and elected officials supporting proposed and recently passed legislative and budget items. These include the Fair Housing Improvement Act, sponsored by U.S. Representative Scott Peters, and the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, sponsored by U.S. Senator Maria Cantwell. These efforts also sought to raise awareness of emerging issues. For example, the Housing Commission encourages support of any efforts to make the Emergency Housing Voucher Program permanent. You'll recall that the Housing Commission's Rental Assistance Division has fully utilized the 501 emergency housing vouchers allocated to us. We'll review these and emerging legislation as they align with the Housing Commission's policy priorities for the calendar year. This year, the Housing Commission was successful in having 2 projects submitted for potential funding as part of the congressionally directed spending process, which directs federal spending towards specific investments through state, local, or nonprofit recipients. The first was a request for $850,000 by U.S. Representative Juan Vargas on behalf of the University Avenue densification pilot described earlier. The second was a request for $1.5 million by U.S. Senator Alex Padilla and $1 million by U.S. Representative Scott Peters for the homeless shelter expansion capital improvements project. The Housing Commission continues to explore the possibility of converting unused office space on the first floor of this building to create a shelter for transition-age youth experiencing homelessness. The requested federal shelter funding would support the rehabilitation and conversion of this office space. If the board approves it today, the calendar year 2024 state and federal advocacy legislative engagement guide will be presented to the City Council's Economic Development and Intergovernmental Relations Committee on November 1st and the Housing Authority on December 12th. Throughout the year, the policy team will coordinate with internal departments on proposed legislation and update leadership on advocacy efforts. We'll continue tracking and analyzing state and federal affordable housing and homelessness policy as identified by the priority areas outlined in the Advocacy and Legislative Engagement Guide. Today, we are asking that the board take the action on this slide and recommend approval to the Housing Authority of the Legislative Guide. And that concludes our presentation. Michael, Holly, and I, to my ability, are available to answer any questions.
Lisa, I have 12 questions for you.
I defer to Holly.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Commissioners, comments, questions? Vice Chair Kleiner.
Thank you all very much. In general, it is so helpful to see that we have, how do I put this, a coherent plan for how we interpret and analyze and respond to legislation. That is something that we've all, I've been here, I don't know, 5 years or something now, and this is the most coherent strategy that I've seen. It seems like it's always been very piecemeal. We hear about things, we ask somebody, we're not really sure what the position's going to be. We don't have a way to determine what our position is if it wasn't something we're so the fact that this has been thought through and there's a process for how we implement our strategic plan is really helpful. It's also wonderful to see both Mike and Holly, and I don't mean this as any criticism to anybody who came before, but I was not even aware that we had anybody in Sacramento until I had been here for maybe 3 years or so, something like that. And so to both have you here in San Diego meeting with us is fantastic, and just to have a very active plan. This is such a critical issue, and it is so entwined with state policy and state legislation that it's extremely encouraging to see that both on the staff level and with your team that we have an active presence in the legislature. I had one specific question for you. AB 1287, the Alvarez bill. I did a quick search and couldn't answer my own question here. Where did that land with respect to the coastal issue? I believe this is the one where there was a question of whether it was going to include the coastal zone or not. It does not.
It does not.
Okay. All right.
It was removed from the bill in the first house in the Natural Resource Committee.
Yes, I remember seeing that, and I know why. Yeah, it's a great bill, anyways, and I'm glad that we supported it. But that is a bummer. And one thing that as a coastal city here that is dealing with all of these issues, it's really hard to look away from the fact that some of these coastal issues, what they translate into from a housing equity standpoint, is that we have designated the highest income places with the most expensive properties and the wealthiest residents as essentially off limits to affordable housing in the middle of a housing and homelessness crisis. And I just don't know how that's morally acceptable given the world we live in right now. And I know that it seems like every 2 years there's a little shift in the legislature with respect to these housing issues. And so I'm eternally hopeful that some of these equity issues get resolved, specifically when it comes to coastal issues. If not in this one, hopefully something else in the future. But thank you for letting me know how that turned out, and hopefully something can be done on that later. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no further comments or questions, I have first of all, I want to echo Michael, Holly, thank you for being here. What I want to point out to the people who are here in the room and people watching this later, this is the second year we've had this conversation about being organized, right? We are a big commission with a big job, and I always say this, I take my hat off, my coat, my tie, everything to this entire team, because every day your job is tough, because you're trying to make something happen, and you're not always going with the current. Right? We're trying to build housing. We're trying to take people off the streets, trying to create shelter. It's a multi-pronged approach. It's not just about the people that get elected at City Hall. It's about what goes on in Sacramento. It's about what goes on in D.C. And the fact that we as an organization realize that and made this change is significant, because we will be able to help more people. We will help improve this situation because of these activities. So, Michael, Holly, thank you very much. And again, I'll say it once again, it was so wonderful to get the news from Molly Weber that we had been awarded money for the first time ever in the history of this organization to support some of the vision that we have, and this will continue to be a focus. So I want to thank you for your efforts on that. And the last is I can't help it, but when Vice Chair Klempner and I, we always think about these things. It is so hard to address a crisis when you're always told no. My great-grandfather used to say to me, and I was born here, but I grew up in Oklahoma, so you'll understand this. Son, you cannot be moving forward if you're just standing still. And that's usually because he wanted me to do something. It was about chores. And I think that when you think about 1287, and you think about the discussion of housing stock, and Michael, you and I have had this conversation from the BIA days, what drives me crazy is that we know we have a problem with stock. We know we have a problem with inventory. We know we need to build. And we get criticized if we look at projects that are too far east. But yet we're not allowed to build anywhere in the West. And I'm always amazed at the people who don't come out and call it out for what it is, especially the electeds. Can't have it both ways. And I'm talking about one specific group of people in general who don't want you to build east because you can't build out east, right? But you sprawl. But you can't build west because those properties are valuable and those people don't want anybody else in the neighborhood. And you can't have it both ways. We either want to solve the crisis and build more inventory and get people off the streets and bring the price of housing down, or we don't. It's either or, right? And I just think that at some point, I hope the choir of voices that joins us in this effort sings a little louder. I want sopranos, baritones, tenors, I want them all. That we have to get real about where we have availability to build, let's do it. And nobody should be able to say, whoa, 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 whoa. Not here. And so I want to say this is a fantastic year, great progress. Everybody who is following the Housing Commission should expect more of the same. And we're going to keep trying to be visionary, and we're going to keep trying to be exemplary, because we are a partner to the mayor and the council in this effort, and we hope they appreciate the fact that we're not just complaining about the problem, we're trying to be constructive about solutions. Okay, with that, I'll entertain. I think we need a motion to accept the guide, so we can get started. So we have a motion by Vice Chair Klempner, second by Commissioner Jackson. Any further comments, questions, concerns? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for your help. All right, next up is item 104. And Commissioner Hester, I know you have a hard stop at 11, so we're going to move through and so that we can get you out of here. And I think, I thought I saw her sitting out there, and she hadn't said anything yet. I was like, she's got to be coming up for, I know you were. The next step is item 104, and we will take public comments after the presentation. This is the final Bond Authorization and Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, TEFRA, hearing and a resolution for Harrington Heights. Joining us to the mic, as I know you normally do, Jennifer Coiter, and she's going to present, but I see you brought your sidekick, so Colin's going to chime in just a bit. All right, floor is yours.
All right, you might get tired of me by the end of today. There's a number of projects, but
Are you going to defer?
Yeah, I'll defer to Colin now.
Okay, and then
All right. So, good morning, Chair Mitchell and Commissioners. The item before you today is a request to approve the final steps to issue tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and taxable bonds, as well as hold a TEFRA hearing for the construction of Harrington Heights, formerly known as 13th Broadway. Harrington Heights is the proposed construction of a 273-unit project, which is made up of 270 affordable units and 3 unrestricted manager units. The project is located at 1320 Broadway in the East Village neighborhood of downtown San Diego, Council District 3. The proposed project's 270 affordable units will be studio, 1, and 2-bedroom units. 75 of the units will be set aside for households experiencing homelessness, 10 of which will be for veterans. All units will be for households with income levels from 25 to 50% of area median income for 55 years. This equates to income levels of $24,100 per year for a one-person household to $62,050 a year for a 3-person household. Since the site is located in a transit priority area, there's high accessibility for transit options, with the closest trolley station being 0.1 miles away. The developer, Chelsea Investment Corporation, is an experienced, award-winning for-profit developer. With respect to the proposed development, a Housing Commission residual receipts loan of up to $8 million was awarded and subsequently approved by the Housing Commission Board on October 13, 2022. In addition to a loan, they were also awarded 115 federal project-based vouchers from the Housing Commission for the development, 75 of which are permanent supportive housing vouchers, including 10 of those being for veterans. Services for all tenants will be provided by Alpha Project and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. This slide shows a site map of the development and the proximity to transit, which are the blue bus icons, schools, which are the green book icons, and grocery stores, the yellow grocery cart icons. The closest trolley station is 0.1 miles from the site, while the closest school is less than a half a mile away, and the closest grocery store is about a quarter mile. The total development cost of the project will be $142.8 million, which equates to a per unit cost of $523,000. Notable sources of funding include a permanent loan, loans from the Housing Commission, City of San Diego, and the state, a deferred developer fee, and tax credits. Units will be restricted at 25 to 50% of San Diego's area median income for 55 years. Rent will range from $603 to $1,550 per month. Should this be approved today, staff will present to the Housing Authority for approval on October 10th, 2023. The developer would then close construction financing by the end of next month and complete construction shortly thereafter with an anticipated completion date in November 2025. Here's an architect's rendering of the proposed project. To summarize the developer's request, you are considering approvals to take the final steps to issue up to $68.7 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds. Bond issuance will not create a financial liability of the Housing Commission, Housing Authority, nor the city. Neither the full faith and credit nor taxing power of the city, nor full faith and credit of the Housing Authority will be pledged for payment of the bonds. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. I would like to point out that the developer requested an increase to the taxable bonds that will be presented to the Housing Authority on October 10th. The increase is from $37 million, which is listed on the slide, to $41 million. No other changes to the action items will be requested. This concludes the presentation. Colin and I, along with representatives from the developer, are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer and Colin. All right, we have a couple of speaker slips submitted. One from Joy, and I know that Chelsea has that Heidi's here from Chelsea. We'll see what happens if we have any questions.
Thank you so much. First of all, Joy Senyata, District 3. First of all, let me say that I think it's really important at these TEFRA hearings that a warm body of a public person present and speak. So I'm going to be speaking on all three, but I'm going to make it short. Okay, so 270 units, 25 to 50% AMI, affordable 55 years. Chelsea is one of the best. Thank you to all on the list of the permanent financing sources. We love you, and we have 11 hugs to give these people because that list always blows me away. 11 on that list. So please vote yes. Love to all.
Thank you, Joy. I appreciate it. Concise, but very, very positive, impactful. All right. There are no further. Heidi, do you want to make any comments? I think your work speaks for itself. So, all right. Thank you. All right. Commissioner comments, questions? Seeing none. Again, great project. Love the location. Love the mixture of vouchers. So with that, I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Commissioner Hubbard. Second by Commissioner Hester. See, I got it right. Hubbard, Hester. All right, I'm getting there. All right. Any further comment? No. Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. We will go ahead and move to the next item up, which is item 105. This is, the final bond authorization and TEFRA hearing and resolution for the IRIS at San Ysidro Apartments. Jennifer, before we get started, remember what I asked you that you were going to remind me to do, but you forgot to tell me last week?
I'm being put on spot.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. You
I was going to say, what did you remind me to do? On that note.
The floor is yours.
So, the item before you today is a request to approve the final steps to issue tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and taxable bonds, as well as hold a TEFRA hearing for the construction of IRIS at San Ysidro Apartments. IRIS at San Ysidro Apartments is the proposed construction of a 100-unit project, which is made up of 99 affordable units and 1 unrestricted manager unit. The project is to be located at 1663 Dairy Mart Road in San Ysidro, Council District 8. The proposed project's 99 affordable units will be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. 15 of the units will be set aside for households experiencing homelessness under the County of San Diego's No Place Like Home program. All units will be for households with income levels from 25 to 60% of area median income for 55 years. This equates to income levels of $27,550 per year for a two-person household to $82,680 per year for a four-person household. As this site is located in a transit priority area, there is high accessibility for transit options. The closest trolley station is a half a mile from the site. The developer, National Core, is an experienced, award-winning nonprofit developer. With respect to the proposed development, a Housing Commission residual receipts loan of up to $2.3 million was awarded and subsequently approved by the Housing Commission Board on June 11, 2021. In addition to a loan, they are also awarded 25 federal project-based vouchers from the Housing Commission for the development. In order for the project to remain financially feasible, the developer requests an exception to Section 1.9 of the bond policy to allow for the bond purchaser and tax credit investor to be related parties. With the exception granted, the project will generate additional equity, while without it, the project would have a significant financial gap. As a result, the Housing Commission agreed to proceed with granting the exception. Services for all tenants will be provided by the County of San Diego's Behavioral Health Services for the 15 No Place Like Home units, Hope Through Housing Foundation, Casa Familiar, and San Ysidro Health. This slide shows this map of the development and the proximity to transit, schools, and grocery stores. The closest trolley station is a half a mile from the site, while the closest school is about 3/4 mile away, and the closest grocery store is about a 1/4 mile. The total development cost of the project will be $66.3 million, which equates to a per unit cost of approximately $663,000. Notable sources of funding include a permanent loan, loans from the Housing Commission, City of San Diego, and the county, a deferred developer fee, and tax credits. Units will be restricted at 25 to 60% of area median income for 55 years. Rents will range from $689 to $2,150 per month. Should this be approved today, staff will present to the Housing Authority for approval on October 10, 2023. The developer would then close construction financing by the end of next month and begin construction shortly thereafter with an anticipated completion date in July 2025. Here's an architect's rendering of the proposed project. To summarize the developer's request, you are considering approvals to take the final steps to issue up to $31.5 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds. Bond issuance will not create a financial liability to the Housing Commission, Housing Authority, nor the city. Neither full faith and credit nor taxing power of the city, nor full faith and credit of the Housing Authority will be pledged to payment of the bonds. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. This concludes the presentation. Colin and I, along with representatives from the developer, bond counsel, and financial advisor, are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, Jennifer and Colin. We have one speaker slip on this item. Joy Sunyata, the floor is yours. The mic is yours once again.
Thank you so much. Less than a minute. Okay, 31,500,000 bonds for acquisition and new construction. Hey, by the time I got to this agenda item and I saw 151 pages, I said no. So I trust your due diligence on this one to authorize the bonds. Love to all.
Once again, very impactful, Joy. All right. Comments, questions, commissioners? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Hubbard. Okay, I'm like, okay, we out. And a second by Commissioner Jackson. All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. All right. One more to go. Be parched. All right. Item 106. Final bond authorization and TEFRA hearing and resolution for the Skyline Apartments. Jennifer, Colin, the floor is yours.
Did I forget anything this time?
I'm sure you did, but I'll remind you in the middle of your presentation.
The item before you today is a request to approve the final steps to issue tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and tax law bonds, as well as hold a TEFRA hearing for the construction of Skyline Apartments, which is formerly known as Rancho Bernardo Transit Village. Skyline Apartments is the proposed construction of a 100-unit project, which is made up of 99 affordable units and 1 unrestricted manager unit. The project is to be located at 16785 to 16787 West Bernardo Drive in Rancho Bernardo, Council District 5. The proposed project's 99 affordable units will be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. All units will be for households with income levels from 30 to 55% of area median income for 55 years. This equates to income levels of $33,100 per year for a 2-person household to $75,790 a year for a 4-person household. A portion of the site is the Rancho Bernardo Transit Station, which provides bus service. The developer, Affirmed Housing Group, is an experienced award-winning for-profit developer. With respect to the proposed development, the Housing Commission awarded 30 federal project-based vouchers. Services for the tenants will be provided by Compass for Affordable Housing. This slide shows the site map of the development and the proximity to transit, schools, and grocery stores. A portion of the site provides bus service, while the closest grocery store and school are both just over a mile away. The total development cost of the project will be $90.9 million, which equates to a per unit cost of $909,000. Notable sources of funding include a permanent loan, loans from the Housing Commission, City of San Diego, and the county, a deferred developer fee, and tax credits. With respect to the higher than average per unit cost, it's primarily due to the following reasons. First, construction costs and interest rates have significantly increased over the past couple years, which has been seen across all projects. Additionally, the developer will be constructing 85 Metropolitan Transit System replacement parking stalls as part of the project. This is an investment for the community, as the parking will be available for all patrons at the Rancho Bernardo Transit Station. Also, through the developer's design review process with the City of San Diego and a water study that had been submitted to the city determined that a water loop is required rather than an upgrade of an existing system. It was also determined that approximately 550 feet of additional sewer was required for the property. Finally, the site will include 14,500 square feet of commercial office space, which will be initially used for affirmed housing. However, as the site will be leased through MTS, other commercial options are available for future use. Please note that the tax-exempt bonds proposed for approval today will not cover non-residential related costs. When the commercial office space and the 85 MTS replacement parking stalls are removed from the project's total development cost, the cost per unit goes to $816,000. Units will be restricted at 30 to 55% of area median income for 55 years. Rents will range from $775 to $1,971 per month. Should this be approved today, staff will present to the Housing Authority for approval on October 10, 2023. The developer would then close construction financing by the end of next month and begin construction shortly thereafter, with an anticipated completion date in February 2026. Here's an architect's rendering of the proposed project. To summarize the developer's request, you are considering approvals to take the final steps to issue up to nearly $42.5 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds. Bond issuance will not create a financial liability to the Housing Commission, Housing Authority, nor the city. Neither the full faith and credit nor taxing power of the city, nor the full faith and credit of the Housing Authority will be pledged to payment of the bonds. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. This concludes the presentation. Colin and I, along with representatives from the developer, are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, we have one speaker slip on item 106 as well. Joy, the floor is yours.
Joy Sinetta, District 3. 99, it's a nice number, affordable units. Affirmed Housing Group, again, this is one of the best. 30 to 55% AMI, affordable for 55 years. I really appreciated the timeline, the milestone list of dates, and I look forward to those dates as City Council is involved there. So please vote yes. Love to all.
Thank you, Joy. All right, Commissioner, comments, questions? Vice Chair Klempner, I know, has the same question I have, so go right ahead.
Chair.
Commissioner Hester.
Just made me think Rancho Bernardo area, transportation, grocery spaces, areas. You talked about that, right?
I think it's on the map. Did they?
Yeah, I can go back to the map real quick.
Slide 4.
Okay. Oh, there it was. I just saw it. So yeah, the closest grocery stores and schools were just over a mile away. While it's on the transit station, so it's the bus service is provided right there.
Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Klempner.
So I have some questions about the cost per unit, and I'm going to be voting yes, so let me just get that out of the way. And I think one of the hardest things about affordable housing for lay people to wrap their heads around is that the cost per unit is not the same. It does not mean the same thing in affordable housing and how affordable housing is financed as it does when you think about normal housing and cost per unit compared to how much it rents. That's what makes it viable or not. This is a different financing model. So I am well trained to not get stuck on that point. However, I think we also have to recognize that this project in particular, I have already seen getting cited far and wide as the example of choice for people who are opponents of affordable housing or any form of publicly subsidized housing. And so I think it warrants some attention and also just some recognition, both the developers here and staff that while a project may work just fine financially from our perspective, there is a larger public perception around how much money is being spent and how much we get out of it that I think we have to kind of take seriously. So with that said, I am looking at the report here and I want us to jump in so that we're really clear with the public on what exactly is going on with this. One, the 909 is not the cost, the residential cost per unit. The 909 includes a bunch of non-residential components that are not accessing the same bonds project, and so we default to rolling those into the cost per unit. Is this correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Do we have to do that in these documents? Do we have to include the headquarters broken out on a per unit basis?
Yeah, we do. And then part of the reason for that is when you look at the capital stack, which, by the way, all the developments today have had very long capital stacks. As we've noticed, the developers are going out and chasing down every bit of funding they can. And I'd point out that the $90 million, there's nothing from the Housing Commission in that capital stack.
Right.
We have vouchers, but they've gone out and brought resources to our region that would have otherwise been lost to other cities, Los Angeles, et cetera. And so the reason that we need to include the commercial portion within the total development cost, some of those sources, like the equity generated by some of the tax credits, the developer gets a developer fee. They can use some of their non-restricted fees to pay for, non-restricted funds to pay for that part of the construction. So it is part of the total development.
So in the lasagna of our financing here, some of those layers are crossing the boundaries between the residential and the commercial use. Correct. And so that's why it has to be, okay, but just to make it super clear for the public here, the residential cost per unit is $816.
That's
so
correct.
We're taking 90-ish million or 90-ish thousand per unit right off the top, not part of the residential. Right. And you read my mind and got to the next point, which is no Housing Commission money is going into this at all. So there's that as well. 816 is still high, and even in the world where we're getting accustomed to to inflation rates. And so with that, so this is MTS property. This is a long-term lease, right?
Yeah, 99-year.
Okay, and so the MTS parking is 41,000, comes out to about 41,000 per unit. And I have a question on the MTS parking there. Is that inclusive of the residence parking, or that is just okay? So MTS has imposed a parking requirement on this project above and beyond what applies to the residents, and that is equated to $41,000 per unit added costs. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, just because there are parkings that's going to be for the residents itself, but those 85 units is what MTS is requiring for just the patrons that are coming to use the transit.
So the 816,000 includes the parking for the residents. That the residents would be using. Okay.
Correct.
And the parking that the residents would be using, it's what, 85% of units. It's a high percentage of residential of resident parking, right?
Yeah, we have 2 and 3 bedroom units, and so I know there've been a number. Well, Jennifer looks for the number. The building department has allowed for a reduction in parking, but because we have larger units, you're going to have more than one parking stall for a 3-bedroom unit, for example.
Go ahead.
No,
I was just going to say there's 78 spots that are for the 100 units. So, granted,
I'm sorry, I don't know where I got the 85% in my head. It was probably some sort of rough math.
There's 85 parking stalls for that aren't residential related.
Got it. Yeah.
Exactly, for the public.
Yeah, so
Got it.
78 for the residents.
Correct.
85 for the public.
Got
Correct.
it. So 78 parking stalls for 99 restricted units. Okay. And the amount of parking that's provided for the residents, was that essentially what determined their needs were for the residents, or was that required for the 2 and 3 bedroom that you were?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to the developer on that one as far as what the building code and building department required them to build per unit.
Hi.
Turn your mic on.
Right here. Perfect. Good morning. First and foremost, I would like to thank the San Diego Housing Commission staff for all the work that they've done to get us to this milestone today. So I really appreciate that. The parking requirement of 78 stalls is not city code. There's a 0 code here, but we'd like to have our residents have a parking stall.
Okay.
Got it. And do you happen to know what the cost per unit of the residence parking comes out to? If not, that's okay.
It's about 47,000 per stall.
Okay.
And the reason why we can't go more is because of the site constraints of we would have to go another story basically if we wanted additional stalls.
Got it. I'm going to ask you to hang out there for a second because I have a couple more questions. So, okay, so I have no complaints with the parking being provided for the residents, even though, I am a fan of seeing more transit-oriented housing, but, 2-3 bedrooms, I understand we don't want to create a situation here where, especially in Rancho Bernardo, where there's, a shortage of parking that residents actually need. Totally understand. But I think also for the public purpose, $47,000 per unit. So we're starting to get a clearer picture. So we're now at close to $100,000 in just parking is what the per unit comes out to here. Okay. And then it looked, if I'm understanding this correctly, the land costs with MTS are not actually. How much is the upfront, and how much is the back end costing with respect to MTS? Yeah.
Of course. So the upfront to MTS is $131,000. It's about $1,300 per unit. And then on an annual, for the 99-year ground lease, their lease payment is 5% of cash flow after everything else has been paid. So they're very last in the waterfall. So that's a very, for what we've seen, that's a fairly reasonable lease.
Okay, got it. So with respect to MTS's role and why we're seeing such a high cost here on a publicly owned site, an MTS site, it's really not the rent or the lease payments. It is the parking requirement that is driving that cost. And this is partly puzzling to me because
The main reason to build on a transit line.
Yeah, this is not the MTS board, but my understanding of transit-oriented development is that the purposes that, or the part of the reason to focus on this type of development is that we're adding ridership by co-locating the housing with the transit, and then here we are imposing very steep parking costs on the same project that are geared towards non-transit use. Am I thinking about this right?
Yeah, well, I can't speak to MTS's requirements for parking. What I would point out is the developers providing 78 parking stalls. Yes, they are on a bus transit line, but if you have kids or family members, not every emergency happens right as the bus is pulling up, and not everything can run on a schedule. And so to have parking for the residents, I think, is critical to making it a livable space, especially out in Rancho Bernardo, where you're going to need a car to get to a hospital, a grocery store, et cetera. So from the MTS perspective, we can't speak to that. Maybe the developer can. But as far as actually providing parking for the future residents, I believe that's the right call.
Thank you. And if can you confirm if my memory is correct here? I think we've seen this before, and one of the comments, I think maybe even Jimmy was here, or maybe said otherwise. There was a possibility for MTS to do a study of their actual parking needs, because this lot right now has a fairly low utilization rate. Did MTS ever do that study as to what their actual parking needs are into the future?
Not for the future, but at that point of time, that's why the 85 number came along. It's actually 84 now, just the space hasn't shrunk. It's just the city code requirements, just the lines really at the end of the day. But long story short, MTS needs those 85 forest stalls in order for us to develop the project.
Yeah, so this is certainly not directed at Affirmed. I more have questions as to how MTS is coming up with these numbers and whether these actually reflect these. I would be very curious to learn more about this, but my concern with this project is more with respect to how MTS is approaching affordable housing on their properties and how it is impacting the cost, and not towards, we've seen many Affirm projects. I have never noticed before anything about, Affirm's cost per unit being higher than anybody else's. And so, the difference here seems to be MTS. One last question for you. Is this site maxed out in terms of its allowed density, or is it somewhere short of that due to financing constraints?
We actually went to the city and got a limited density bonus, and we're going to be signing a density bonus agreement with the commission right before closing or during closing as well. So we are maxed out, and we are maxing out there, and also financing constraints as well.
Got it. So, Colin, maybe you see where I'm going with this. If this was not such an expensive site to deal with, could more units have gone into it, or is this the best we can do regardless?
There we go. Yeah, if more funding were available, or if the cost per unit were less, like I mentioned, the capital, they're bringing $90 million into the San Diego. With that reduction in parking, and that's $100,000. So that's however many more units we could build. Absolutely, yeah.
Roughly 1/9 of the cost is parking. So, and again, we're not in a world where this site's ever going to be developed with no parking. I'm not suggesting that, but where I do get concerned here is it seems like the objectives really should be maximizing the allowed housing on the site, and that this is occurring on MTS property specifically to boost transit ridership. And it seems like somehow in the policy decisions on the MTS end, it seems like those have not been the level of priority I would have expected. So I'm hoping that I'm hoping that maybe there can be a larger conversation with MTS about their priorities going forward and what these projects look like, because we certainly need more affordable housing being built on MTS, and it's a big opportunity. But this project is raising two major concerns for me. One is how viable that is and what our ability actually is to maximize that given the constraints that MTS is putting on these. And then secondly, it is very concerning to me that this is becoming that the cost per unit is becoming a lightning rod, and it's being weaponized in a misinformed way. Which is the other thing I want to point out here. The cost per unit from a housing perspective is not 909, and people who say that we're producing housing at 909,000 per unit for affordable housing and that's the public subsidy, neither of those statements is true. That's not the public subsidy. That's not how much the per unit costs. But because of the way that we transparently report this is becoming a political talking point that's concerning to me. So those are my comments. Again, happy to vote yes, and the concerns are really not directed at affirmed here or at staff, more at the circumstances and the other agency that is the partner here.
All right. Any other comments? All right, I will entertain a motion. Before I do, I just would say, Colin, I agree with Vice Chair Clemmer. This deserves a conversation with Sharon Cooney at MTS and maybe even, the chair, Councilmember Whitman. We've had this conversation at this board before. There are certain barriers to the price per unit that can easily be addressed by either the city council. Everything we build up north of the 56 is outrageous, right? As opposed to what we're building down in North Park at all. So I think this deserves a conversation with MTS to see if there's a way to address this.
Absolutely, and we'll reach out to MTS and to the council member. And in this case, the cost would have been even higher had this been acquiring a private parcel of land.
Yeah, sure.
May not have had the MTS parking requirements, but you're right. Everything up north is definitely more expensive.
Yeah, and again, it creates a problem. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by the Vice Chair, second by Commissioner Jackson. Any further comments, questions, concerns? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us to the close of our regular session today of the San Diego Housing Commission. I want to thank all of you who are in attendance today and for your support of this discussion and the work of the Housing Commission. And thank you to the Housing Commission team for everything you do. We will now clear the room so that we can go into a short closed session meeting for the board. All right? All right. This is Mitch Mitchell, Chair of the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. The board has concluded its closed session and is reconvening an open session at 11:31 a.m. Housing Commission General Counsel Chuck Christensen will now announce the actions the board took in closed session. Chuck, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Housing Commission met in closed session and discussed the matters which were the subject of the closed session agenda and gave unanimous instruction and direction to council to pursue this matter. That concludes the matters that were discussed in closed session.
Thank you very much, Chuck. This concludes the board meetings for today, and the meeting is officially adjourned at 11:31. Thank you, everybody, for your time and your commitment to this effort.